It's on that shorty new year. Shorty new year. Come along to Camp Shorty. It's a Miss Shorty New Year. It's Shorty New Year. It's a Miss Shorty New Year. A Shorty New Year. Come along to Camp Shorty. We're so glad you're here. It's a Miss Shorty New Year. A Shorty New Year. It's a Miss Shorty New Year. A Shorty New Year. Come along to Camp Shorty. We're so glad you're here. It's a Miss Shorty New Year. A Shorty New Year. Come along to Camp Shorty. We're so glad you're here. Camp Shorty is where you will find family. Our beautiful minds will greet you with glee. At Camp Shorty, you can shine and shine bright because Miss Shorty Camp Leader is a fucking delight. It's a Miss Shorty New Year. A Shorty New Year. Come along to Camp Shorty. So glad you're here. It's a Miss Shorty New Year. A Shorty New Year. Come along to Camp Shorty. So glad you're here. Your opinions are valid. You can fly like a bird. With your comments on screen, you will always be heard. It's the best chat on YouTube. You can cuss all you want. And here at Camp Shorty, we even say cunt. It's a Miss Shorty New Year. A Shorty New Year. Come along to Camp Shorty. So glad you're here. It's a Miss Shorty New Year. A Shorty New Year. Come along to Camp Shorty. So glad you're here. Let your raw cats be free. So liberating. We stay on topic, although occasionally things get a bit feral. But it's clear to see. It's a Miss Shorty New Year. A Shorty New Year. Yeah. Come along to Camp Shorty. So glad you're here. It's a Miss Shorty New Year. A Shorty New Year. Come along to Camp Shorty. So glad you're here. It's a Miss Shorty New Year. Camp Shorty is where you will find family. Our beautiful minds will greet you with glee. At Camp Shorty, you can shine and shine bright because Miss Shorty Camp Leader is a fucking delight.
Hi, shorties. Hi. Hi. Good to see you. Happy Saturday in the States. Happy Sunday in Australia. Whoa. Hi. Hey, I've got other glasses. I kind of love these ones. I'm channeling my inner Esme. Wait. I never wear cat eye shaped frames. And here we are. Hey. Who's here? Vix. Hey, Vixie. Good to see you. Oh, also, by the way, I didn't replace the squeaky chair. So, hey, Vix. I've been doing some research into Dunblane. You're right. We'll be covering that next in our false flag series. Hi, Steph. Good to see you. Kenzie. Hi, all the way in Scotland, right? Am I right? I do age, but God love makeup, good lighting, and lots of sleep. Yes. Hi, Jenny. Well, hi, Jenny. Good to see you. Hope. But I also saw Hope saying hi to Laura. So hi, Laura. Did I say hi, Simi? Yes. Oh, love, says Steph. I know. How cute are they? They've got animal print and then like a mauve. And these are my earrings too. I put these ones on. Oh, they're teapots, obviously, because they match the exact color of my background. 10 fucking 10. And wait, Go back in my ear. Also, this blouse, I love it. I loved it. And then the last time I wore it was the day I did the 764 live stream, an hour after which came The Blind Side. So it was so triggering for me to even look at this blouse. I couldn't. And then yesterday I'm like, I love that blouse. I'm going to wear it. So miss me with the triggers. Buster's choking on his dog treat. Excellent. Who else is here? Therese is here. Amazing. Life artist. Hi. Laura. Hi. Stream Elements has made it. Fantastic. Have I said hello to everybody? I don't know if I have. Anyway, I'll catch you as we go through. Hi, everyone. Hi. Pia, also. Hi, girl. Thank you, Simi. Replay crew, hi. What have I got here? Sorry about the squeaky chair. Yikes. Replay crew, hi. Thank you for joining after. We appreciate you. If you would like to watch the live chat replay on your handheld device, your Android, totally legit, above board. Android, iPhone, tablet, etc. All you do is go to the few little dots in the top right-hand corner of the comment tab, and swipe left. There's a couple of little options, and it'll give you the option to watch live chat replay, as well as hyping, as well as dropping a comment. Tell us what you think about my glasses, my disappearing arms, or perhaps even what we're going to be watching and talking about tonight. And what is that? Excuse me. Well, this is part 2 of I'm not sure, and the number has no limit, of a series we're doing on the Port Arthur Massacre. I'll give you the too long don't read. If you missed part 1, it's down in the description box below, linked, so you can watch it. A lot of mind-blowing stuff. When we did part 1 last weekend, I was only like 2 days into the realization that holy fuck, Port Arthur Massacre was, I'm not even going to say almost certainly, was certainly not carried out by Martin Bryant, the patsy. We watched an interview with Paul Moder, and that was linked in that live as well. In doing my you've watched Wendy's interview, so thanks, Teresa. Well, this isn't an interview. This is the very first time that Wendy spoke to this publicly, so it's very raw. So I'm going to give you a blanket trigger warning. Excuse me. It was New Year's Eve that I was listening to this, and I was literally that emote with the eyes open, lying in bed at like 11:45, going, holy shit, like this woman. So I feel like, and she's passed away now, Wendy Scurr. I wasn't sure, but she has. I was doing a bit more background stuff this morning. So I'm probably not going to put up trigger warnings throughout. Thank you, Simi. Because oh my God, I'm so sorry. Excuse me. Got it. Delicious, delightful. Because I'm giving you fair warning now. I guess if and when people come into chat who haven't been here along the way, perhaps, but I don't really want to, like, we're adults and we're true crime viewers, so she it's not graphic and gruesome throughout, but it's harrowing testimony. So here now is your, oh my God, what are you doing, Buster? A little bit of dog vomiting on the bed over there. I love that for us. We're professionals. Here now is your, we could pin one in the chat. Great ideas, Steph. Could you please do that? That's a great idea. Fantastic. Thank you. Didn't even occur to me. I'm like not a professional. So if you need to step away, we will hold a seat for you. If you want to come back after, or not at all, but after in replay, crew, and watch the rest. But I do think it's important to I've said this so many times lately. I do think it's important to sit in the uncomfortable stuff because like oh my god, Wendy, wow, like Wendy had to, what she had to live through, and in the and the sort of the suppression, the censorship, and the public mocking, media mocking, that I'm sure she endured for speaking the truth and asking questions. I think we should honor her bravery and her trauma. Fuck, man. So I've linked part 1 in the description box below. I've also linked this interview. So if you want to watch it, and I won't do much interrupting, and except to perhaps give us a moment. I might do a couple of bumpers along the way just to break up the heaviness of it all. We'll obviously do a song break or two, but I'm going to try to not add too much commentary. We'll see. The best laid plans and all that. 11 months, Vix. Yes. Thank you so much for your continued support. I love it. And like I said, Shelley, hello. Like I said, there's not as much in terms of video content that I've found thus far, but holy shit, Dunblane has all the hallmarks. All the hallmarks. And it was 6 weeks prior to the Port Arthur massacre that the Dunblane school shooting by, well, it appears, by Patsy. Again, with no skilled marksmanship and military precision, slaying of actually 16 children and a teacher in a couple of minutes. Same locking of the evidentiary files for 100 years. Same, like, just it, all the hallmarks, and same swift introduction of heavy, harsh gun restriction laws in Scotland and the UK. Yeah. And then horrifically, there's some pretty clear indications that Columbine also is part of this trilogy of, well, false flags, government, not just sanctioned, but organized and orchestrated military. So I'm going to continue to look into that because, and it all goes hand in hand with the ever increasing speed at which we are hurtled towards, 2030, one world government, satanic child abuse, child killings, Jeffrey Epstein, a mass 90 to 90%, 90 to 95% ownership of all things, including politicians, media, Hollywood, like it's all connected. So yeah. So I'm hoping that for anybody who, like me, is very, like, it's been a rude awakening, going, no, man, there's no way the government would do that. Like MK Ultra, they wouldn't. Dude, they do, and they still are. And these are people who don't have empathy. The people in charge at the top do not have empathy. They are psychopaths, and we know all about psychopaths here at Camp Shorty. So I'm hoping that by showing you all these things, we can not only increase awareness and just of our worldview, open our eyes a little bit, and come to understand that then those conspiracy theories maybe aren't conspiracy theories. They're just full-blown, state orchestrated, the oligarchs, the technocrats, the minuscule percentage, the Satanists, it's all connected, and we, humanity, need to rally together. So I'm just trying to crack open little doors all around this interconnected nightmare, so that you can start to tell your parents about it. Show them one of the videos you think might resonate. Show them one of the links I've shared in the Discord. Show your friends, show your sister, show your brother, show your husband, because we need to reach critical mass if we're going to stop this. And if we don't stop it, like I don't know, I promise I won't go black pilling all the time, but you understand that the plan is for AI to take over so deeply that humans. Sounds ridiculous, but it's not. The humans will be like, and we've got manufactured consent in like Netflix. I can't even. But by 2030, they're and this seems like a short amount of time away, and ludicrous that it would get there by then. But that's the plan, that humans will do so little thinking for themselves. And the more you use AI like ChatGPT, Grok, et cetera, even the AI overview on Google, it actually, your mental capacity, your ability to use your own brain power, Buster, please, reduces and reduces. That's the plan. They don't want us to be able to have the intellectual curiosity to ask questions. Like, this is a master plan. So hi, happy Saturday, y'all. um Jenny, it is already happening. Oh my God, my chair, my whole thing. Yeah. And Shelley, thank you for my compliment on my glasses. I never wear cat eye frames, and I think these are super cute. So I'm doing it. We're actually late in the timeline. Yeah, man. Digital. I mean, dude, like the Australian government, same with Keir Starmer in the UK, is lobbying to ban X in Australia. It was literally 1 month to the day since the under 16s age restriction ban came on for us in Australia. Get the fuck out of here. Like, I don't care. Like, YouTube's get. Thanks for coming to my TED Talk. If you're in green, you can easily drop the TED Talk emote into chat, because holy shit. I also had a lovely time last night, and I hope you all did too. Hope, thank you. I got your email, and also Christy. I haven't had a chance to read them yet, but if you weren't in, oh my God, the throat clearing. I'm so sorry. Hang on. If you weren't in our gratitude stream last night, catch the replay. And honestly, it was a beautiful stream. I will make sure that we keep our vibration high by doing regular streams like that while we wade through this extraordinarily low vibration shit. Because I'm all about lifting us all up, right? But I want us to have our eyes open as we're lifted. So that's the plan. That's the plan. Hi guys, I had to come over here. I was lonely on Kick. Thanks for the reminder. We are streaming live on YouTube, obviously. Hi, Twitter. Hi, Twitter, and or X, and Kick. So if you've got Kick, you could be in both chats. Cool emotes over there. Also, if we happen, we're not going to get shut down, but if we happen to get shut down, we can go straight over there, and the stream, the whole video will be continuous, right? Yes, Buster. So without further ado, just a reminder. Hi, Washbar, by the way. There it is. Washbar's over on Kick. Just a reminder. I presume Steph has pinned. Wait, why doesn't my thing? My chat doesn't like me. I can't see the live chat on YouTube. But Steph, or Shelley, if you could please pin that trigger warning reminder. If you need to take a moment, take a break. This is a powerful presentation. It's about an hour long, So don't worry, it's not going to go forever. Yes, Buster, coming. Let me pull this up on screen for you all. Thank you all for being here. I love you all very much. I am so grateful for you all every day. You make my life worth living. True story. Here it is. So I've linked this. Yes, Buster. Jeez Louise, man. I've linked this in the description box if you would like to watch it again, particularly if chatting means that you missed some of it. So there's a couple of minutes in the beginning of some stuff on screen with no audio, if I recall correctly. Particularly when it's on mute. That's yeah. Yes, Bussy. Let me go. I'll go let Buster out because he must need to poop after his treat. Just check that. So the coroner did not wish to conflict with the Supreme Court, who can only decide guilty or not guilty. The coroner must have realised the evidence before him at the time cast serious doubt on the guilt of Martin Bryant. Bobby.
My wife Elizabeth and I were both employees at Port Arthur Historic Site Management Authority and were both working there the day of the massacre. My wife Elizabeth was murdered inside the gift shop section of the Broad Arrow Cafe, one of 20 victims murdered thereabouts. I know that Martin Bryant was not the gunman at the massacre at Port Arthur. How do I know? The coroner, Mr. Ian Matheson, wrote a letter to a number of survivors of the massacre informing us that Martin Bryant was not the gunman at Port Arthur. In the letter dated the 31st of January 1997, the coroner, Mr. Matheson, wrote, "As a result of the outcome of the charges against Martin Bryant in the Supreme Court of Tasmania, I write to advise I do not intend to resume the inquest that I opened on the 29th of April 1996. I believe it is not in the interests of the family, friends or witnesses to again traverse the factual situation in a public hearing, particularly when any finding I make must not be inconsistent with the decision of the Supreme Court." Well, I thought long and hard about this statement and discussed the point with friends. You must understand that there were many other facts of the shootings inside the Broad Arrow Cafe that begged a proper, open investigation, including workplace safety issues and especially the issue of the emergency exit, that were totally outside the issues of the gunman. It was the simple fact that the coroner, Mr. Ian Matheson, believed that he could not make any finding that was inconsistent with the findings of the Hobart Supreme Court that really stirred me. The Supreme Court can only make the finding of either guilty or not guilty in the matter brought before it. It follows that for Mr. Ian Matheson's inquest into the massacre at Port Arthur to make a finding inconsistent with the Hobart Supreme Court, then the finding could have only been Martin Bryant was not guilty of the charges brought before him. For the coroner, Mr. Ian Matheson, to arrive at the decision not to resume the inquest into the death of the 35 people that were murdered at Port Arthur, the massacre due to this reason, which he himself provided, and the coroner must have been aware that Martin Bryant was not guilty of the serious offences which produced 72 charges against police brought against him that day.
So that says, as a result, letter of Matheson Bryant not guilty, 31st of January 1997. So this event happened on the 28th of April 1996. Yes, Buster. Come in, Buster. You can do it. I believe in you. Come on, Bussy. Come on. I believe in you. Easy peasy. Sister Curtin. As a result of the outcome of the charges preferred against Martin Bryant. Good boy, Buster. You got it. You got this. You got this. Yes, you did it. Good boy. I'm so proud of you. At the Supreme Court of Tasmania, I write to advise I do not attend to resume the inquest that I opened on the 29th of April, 1996, so the day after the event. I believe it is not in the interests of family, friends, or witnesses to again traverse the factual situation to a public hearing, particularly when any finding I make must not be inconsistent with the decision of the Supreme Court. I have today written to the Attorney General, advising of my decision. May I take this opportunity on behalf of the staff of my office to extend our condolences for your sad loss. Yours sincerely, Ian R. Mattison, Chief Coroner's Delegate, Southern Tasmania. I might just mute that from a copyright point of view because all right. Pause and unmute. Wait, what's this? Hang on. Just like the coroner, the prosecution would have known Martin Bryant. I'll just make sure you can hear me. Yes. Phew. Imagine if I was muted through all of that. Fuck. Just like the coroner, the prosecution would have known Martin Bryant will be found not guilty. Therefore, a trial must be avoided, and they had to get Bryant to plead guilty. But how? Wait, that might not be. Hang on. Mute. Play. Yep, the answer. Bryant's defense lawyer, who had him plead not guilty, was dismissed without explanation. They found the perfect replacement, John Avery, who had been working for the prosecution and had, there's the next bit is, written a letter of intimidation to gun shop owner Terry Hill, requesting he say he sold the murder weapons to Bryant, parentheses, which he had not, close parentheses, or face charges. Hill refused to go along with the plot, so his business was closed down. Dear Sir, we write to confirm that we attended with you at police headquarters this morning when a discussion was had with Inspector Ross Payne and other police officers. We made it clear so those police officers what your position was, namely that at no time had you sold any guns to Bryant, but that you had sold ammunition to him on each occasion. He had shown to you a gun license, which, of course, enabled you to sell not only ammunition to him, but guns as well. In a private conversation that was had between the writer and Inspector Payne, Inspector Payne made it abundantly clear that police have very strong evidence to suggest that you did, in fact, sell guns to Bryant. And unless you are prepared to, in effect, change your story, yes, Buster, you can do it, Buzzy, come on. They will press on and try and find sufficient evidence to charge you with some offences. However, it was also made abundantly clear that the Director of Public Prosecution, DPP, is prepared to offer you an indemnity against prosecution if you are prepared to accept that you did sell guns to Bryant. Quite clearly, you need to very carefully consider your position over the next few days. If indeed, that's one word, but okay, you did sell guns to Bryant, but that at all times he showed you a gun license, then of course you will have committed no offense at any rate. If, on the other hand, you did sell guns to Bryant and you were aware that he had no license, then clearly you have confirmed an offense. You have committed an offense, but the indemnity being offered to you would ensure that you are not prosecuted for any gun offense. So that's awkward. That feels like coercion, huh? That's like we strongly suggest, sir. And there it is, next page. We would suggest that you give this matter your very careful consideration over the ensuing weekend and contact the writer, perhaps next Tuesday afternoon, in order that we can discuss the matter further. We have indicated to the police that we will not be able to come back to them before Wednesday or Thursday of next week, and that it is acceptable to them. Yours faithfully, dog himself, John Avery. per John Avery. How about that? How about that? That feels suspicious. Huh? Enter new lawyer, John Avery. Hi, Britt. Good to see you. Good to see you. Rachel's here too. Hi, Rach. Good to see you. Sorry, I'm on a different screen, so I can't see all entering. Thanks for being here. We're just getting started. I've had my standard introduction TED talk. It's freaking me out. No. Let me see. Wait.
Bryant, his new lawyer, John Avery.
His efforts to gather
Appointed
evidence.
after Bryant had pleaded not guilty 6 weeks ago.
Mr. Avery will take care of the problem. Interesting. Okay. So I believe this is where the Wendy Scurr, Scurr, where her presentation begins. It's been a minute and I was only listening. You know me, I was only listening. I wasn't watching.
When Martin Bryant first appeared here in the Supreme Court of Tasmania,
Oh, God.
he had
We're going to get a
long blonde
copyright
hair.
strike.
Bizarrely,
Never mind.
he pleaded not guilty.
Okay.
Police had tried over a period of months to convince Bryant to tell the truth. In July 1996, Bryant was even shown images of the crime scenes at Port Arthur.
There's some broad arrow cafe. Okay. You can see a couple of people lying there.
He was shown photographs of each of 35 victims. The investigators hoped seeing the horror he had caused might elicit compassion, even a confession.
And you reckon
Just a reminder, Martin Bryant has an IQ of 66, the sort of the mental age of an 11-year-old, give or take.
It did not.
soon enough?
And I have a feeling maybe like autistic, low functioning.
What about the dead people? Where does it say? What does it say about them? It doesn't.
He's just a baby. He says, what about the dead people? What does it say about them?
Well, what he wanted to say, I don't see what you're saying. People were killed.
Hi, puppy.
Well, why would it have Port Arthur Massacre? But where does it say? How does it say how many people were killed? Yeah.
I know that you weren't pressuring him to plead guilty to all charges.
It seemed to me from day one that the evidence was so overwhelming and the outcome of a trial would have been so obvious that I was trying to avoid a show trial, a circus, a pantomime, call it what you like.
I mean, it's pantomime, but okay, sir.
Because that would have been an absolute stupidity.
It says, true, Bryant takes the stand and identifies the person shooting at police while he was on the phone to the police negotiator, exposing the whole operation. Hence, a trial had to be
But
avoided.
it also involved having all these witnesses, damaged people, come to court.
Who knew Martin Bryant well and stated that the gunman was not him?
And have to give evidence where the outcome was always inevitable.
A man will plead guilty to anything given sufficient coercion. What did you and or the police say do to Mr. Bryant, John Avery? Jenny said, is this actual footage or a reenactment of him being shown the photos? No, that's him. That's police video. We'll watch that in a future episode. There's a channel called The Wasp Files, WASP. I'll grab that now and drop it into chat. That's going to be a phenomenal. Well, it is a phenomenal resource. The man we watched in part 1 of this, Paul Moda, he's an Australian guy who's been researching and pulling resources, talking to survivors and their families, etc. For I think 20 years at least. A mentally impaired patsy with limited cognitive function, no defense, no trial, and no hope. Yeah, that's him.
I told you what you've done. What have I? You've killed 35 people.
Martin turns his head softly, says, bullshit.
And injured several others.
And to finish off, let's pin Avery's crime of embezzlement on Bryant too. Yes, he's been disbarred.
Defending Bryant may well have contributed to the path John Avery took next. He embezzled $500,000 from his law firm to buy art, a passion that became an addiction.
Guys, for the record, art, big buck art purchases are a very classical form of money laundering. Art isn't generally worth what they pay for it. It's a way to launder, and not Donna Adelson laundering, but actual, criminal laundering.
He served 4 years in jail and was disbarred as a lawyer.
Seems like a good guy. Yeah, a man you can trust. Lovely. All right. So here we go. So here is now. So this was in. I think you guys in the States call them like VFL. This. So Wendy Scurr, was a long time resident of Tasmania, and after sometime after the massacre, she relocated to the north coast of New South Wales, and I believe this was while this presentation was I think a couple of years after Port Arthur. Wendy was one of the she'll talk about it, I think, but she was one of the historical guides at the Port Arthur site. Wait, let me just take this away. This is Port Arthur here. Historical site in Tasmania. Guys, we don't need to do that. I'm professional. It was a Sunday. The precision slaughter of 35 people happened in. There's conflicting timeframes, but Wendy, who was there, so she was the chief first aid officer. She trained all of her people within her staff, the other guides, even the police officer, the local police officer who drove up to the gates that day, saw the slain people either at the toll gate. And turned around and drove away. She'd given him 3 first aid or emergency first aid training classes, and he turned around and disappeared. So this is Port Arthur. So she moved to the north coast, I guess, because trauma. I get that, but this was the first time she'd spoken about her experience that day. It is harrowing. Again, I've pinned the trigger warning to the top of the chat. If you're feeling a little like if it's too much, I understand. Take a moment, take a breath. We will take some breaks with music and things to just kind of ease the tension. But so it's a high VHS camcorder. What's up? It's not the best vision, but this sounds pretty good. I think there's a moment where her mic goes out, but they catch it.
Do you know, it seems that any alternative viewpoint on Port Arthur is forbidden in Australia by those that would be our masters. You're simply not supposed to talk about it. You're certainly not supposed to hear what's being said. And that's why we get the dissent. That's why we get the censorship. That's why we get an attack on those who would give another viewpoint. When Wendy Scurr first heard shots at Port Arthur, she ran towards the Broad Arrow Cafe.
Steph asked, who is this? I believe this is her attorney. There's not much detail in the description of this video. I garnered some of my sort of details about it just from what Wendy says. So we're a little bit flying blind together here.
She heard something whistle past ahead and stopped and ran into another building, the centre, and phoned the police. She had some difficulty getting across the viewpoint to police that there was trouble at Port Arthur on that tragic Sunday. She was the first staff member to enter the Broad Arrow Cafe. And she's received many commendations for what she did on that day. Now, Wendy's been a Tasmanian all her life, visited the mainland a few times, and we're pleased to have her here tonight. For 20 years, she's been a member of St John Ambulance Brigade. Her role was firstly to teach others about first aid, to also look after the many first aid kits that are on the Port Arthur historical site.
Hi, Clay.
And if she was...
Hi, Clay. Welcome. We're literally just about to start the main part of the main focus of what we're covering tonight, which is Wendy Scurr. This is her attorney, I believe. Her representative, her legal representative. This was a couple of years after the Port Arthur massacre, the first time Wendy had spoken publicly about her experience. Very brave, so courageous. She does so well. Empaths, which is basically all of us, I think, are going to feel this. And so if y'all need to take a moment, please do. But I think it's important to honor the whole thing and to understand, frankly, how despicable it is that humans were subjected to not only the slaughter, a state-sanctioned, state-organized, as in government, like, the powers that be, slaughter, to be used as a vehicle, a precept, a pretext to ensure changed gun laws to disarm the population. Despicable. So that's where the link is for this. I'm not trauma farming. I need people to understand, to feel what this poor woman did have to live through, and then live with the government, the powers that be, the people planning out humanity, the destruction of humanity, the enslavement of humanity, the reduction of the world population, what they're prepared to put the citizens of the world through as a means to an end. It's outrageous. So that's the point of this. I'm not just here to trauma farm. That's not the point.
Wasn't teaching, she was working as a tour guide. And that was what she was doing on that Sunday. Wendy's going to share with us a little of the history of Port Arthur and also the location. And she said this is an important point. And then she's going to tell us what she experienced on that Sunday, her own experiences. I asked Wendy if she felt her life had changed since then. She said, totally. From a person that was on call for 100 hours a week, she has not worked a single day. She finds that she can't do many very simple tasks. Without Graham, her husband, who's here supporting her today, we don't know what would have happened to Wendy. She's suffering from post-traumatic stress, or shell shock, as it used to be called in the war. And she's asked us to bear with her if she hesitates at any time through a presentation, particularly when she's asked questions, and she's happy to answer questions.
She does answer questions at the end. Interestingly, all men, such Aussie men, such late 1990s Aussie men. It's kind of hilarious. It's a time capsule, this video. At this point, I'm like, oh my God, this poor woman. There's going to be moments where she can't gather herself. you wait. Wendy, like, I have so much respect for this woman. She's passed away now, so.
Because sometimes when she concentrates, it gets very difficult. Now, Wendy, in giving her experiences today, is going to give us a graphic account of what happened. And normally when I see such things in the media, you wonder why they do it. What useful purpose is served by such an horrific viewpoint? But Wendy is concerned that the same thing will happen again. She wants to get across to us what did happen and the horror of it that she experienced and many others experienced on that day. Ladies and gentlemen, to welcome our first speaker for the new millennium at the Inverell Forum 2001, let's give a welcome to Wendy Scurr.
I would like to thank the people of Inverell and the Forum Committee for inviting me here tonight to speak. If it hadn't have been for these people, I guess my story would never have been told. It certainly was never going to happen in Tasmania, so thank you. On behalf of my husband Graham and Andrew, I would like to thank Robert and his committee for inviting us to speak tonight, also to Mr and Mrs Rumming for collecting us from the airport and accommodating us, and it's very good, I might tell you. There is one other person here tonight that Graham and I met on the phone about 4 years ago, Mr David Barton. Thank you, David, for your support. It has been a pleasure to meet you in person.
So salt of the earth Aussie, right? Just like, what a woman. So Aussie, so Australian.
Thank you also to Andrew McGregor for the work that he's put in. I'd read a lot of the documents on many occasions, and I just read over everything. But Andrew, being an ex-policeman, he had a more investigative mind than what I had. Port Arthur is a story of social engineering at its worst. This is the first time I have spoken in detail publicly of my experience at Port Arthur. Out of respect for those killed and their families, I decided my complete experiences should not be told. I am now convinced that our politicians, elected public servants and their offsiders in the bureaucracy have used this against me in their efforts to make sure that due legal process in relation to the Port Arthur massacre never happens. Comments such as, after nearly 5 years it should be forgotten, to me are an insult. You decide for yourself the possibility of me ever forgetting when I have finished speaking tonight. I haven't anything to hide, I don't sleep well at night, but I hope after tonight there are a few more in the same position, and it's not you people. They know who they are. If the cap fits, wear it.
He's spicy.
There
I
were
love
many heroes
her.
at Port Arthur on the 28th of April 1996. I saw the fear, the terror, and against all odds, the staff and visitors who were there give so much of themselves, more than anyone should have to in peacetime in this country. In some cases, these people had found next of kin and partners deceased or injured, but they had no choice but to keep working on. After all this effort, a lot of these people have been thrown on the scrap heap, especially the visitors. Many of them have told me that they have not heard from any Tasmanian Government department or the Port Arthur Historic Site to ask how they are for the past 3 years or longer. Although I have only had regular contact with a few visitors, there is no doubt in my mind these people would be experiencing considerable difficulty. One of these victims lost her only child that day and has had no less than 30 operations in the last 5 years. She was also very severely injured. In fact, when I hear of their problems, I feel guilty that I'm a Tasmanian. If this is the way we treat our tourists, then I wonder why they visit us at all. And if you want to read a little on this particular lady's story, it is in this week's New Idea. And her name is Caroline Lawton.
So New Idea is like our I don't know, does it even still exist? I suppose so. I don't go to supermarkets. It's a magazine, like a trashy, no, not trashy, like a human interest story. It's mainstream media stuff, but they do some. I mean, obviously they let people tell their stories. So I might see if I can find that article for a future stream, and we'll read it.
To these people I say, the thinking Australians are not fooled. They simply don't know the half of it. John Howard said it would be too hurtful for the victims and their families to have a coronial inquiry, as did the Tasmanian Attorney-General Ray Groom. We're still waiting for that coronial inquiry. Without finality, how can we be expected to continue our lives? I recently remember the night I saw John Howard demanding the Australian victims in the bridge collapse at the Massacre Games be properly compensated by the Israelis. Don't get me wrong, I'm not for 1 minute saying they shouldn't have received compensation, but the Port Arthur victims from all over Australia and overseas never received any more than criminal injuries compensation, and I know many who haven't even got that. To my knowledge, no staff or otherwise have received compensation for any damages. The donated money from the Australian people was given and spent on transport burials as far as I know. I'm just going to give you a little history and just show you on the map exactly where Port Arthur is. Port Arthur was settled in 1830 and it closed in 1877, and it was once Australia's largest industrial town. They made everything there from ships to nails. There was approximately 12,700 convicts went through there over that period, and many boys. There were many young
God, muted. Yes. So I'll see if I can find a more appropriate, a more clear map so we can see where Port Arthur is. Yeah. Hi, it's me. It's endearing. It's iconic.
boys transported from England. There is one guy that I used to talk about, and his name was Blunston. He still has or his descendants have a factory in Hobart that makes Blunston boots. Do any of you have any Blunston boots? Well, that young lad, when he came out from England, he was a street urchin. He learnt the trade of boot making at Port Arthur as a boy prisoner. So it wasn't all that bad for them, because a lot of these boys did make something of their lives.
Pause. Okay, so this is Tasmania. Let's make sure that we can see that. Yeah. This is, so it's right down south of Tasmania. How do we do this? I don't know how to do this. Can we, oh, there we go. Oh, go away. Thanks. Oh, no. Okay. So this is Tasmania. Okay. So that's the little bottom of Australia. Where do I live? I live here where the cursor is. And then there is Port Arthur. Okay? Is that helpful? Thanks, that helps me, says Rach. Good. There we go. Okay. So I'll go back to that. We'll do one more zoom through. So look at me using maps. Who am I? Am I Gazella K? Yes, maybe. Tasmania, Port Arthur, mainland Australia. Okay? Got it? Yes. We're total professionals. StreamYard's on drugs. Okay. Make sure you can see that. Yes.
I will talk about communication. Communication with the outside world in the 1830s using a semaphore system enabled a message to be sent to Hobart Town and a message returned within 15 minutes. If a phone wasn't available on the day of the massacre, I hate to think what would have happened. All other forms of communication with the outside world were hopeless. Two-way radios, mobile phones. They did it better in the convict days. The authorities had been aware of this problem for as long as I can remember. The Port Arthur site is a government business enterprise and is run by the Board of Management. Thousands of visitors arrive annually. About 90% of these visitors come from interstate and overseas. And it was about 90% of the people that were injured and killed, the same thing applied on that day, so 90%. Now we've got a map here, and I'm just going to walk over here and just show you where Port Arthur is, and Andrew will also be using this map. We have, can everybody see before I start? This is Port Arthur, and this is where Seascape was.
So if you recall, so where she said this is where Seascape was, that's that cottage where so she points here, down here, and then she points up to here, I think, there. So that's where they reckon he went after, and before and after, Martin Bryant. And eventually that's where the siege was, and where eventually that Seascape cottage was set ablaze. And he came out, Martin Bryant, the patsy, came out and was arrested. We covered that siege a little in the last stream, which is linked in the description box below if you haven't watched it. It's also in the History, Mystery and That Stuff playlist.
Can everybody see before I start?
Yes, Wendy, we love you.
Port Arthur, and this is where Seascape was. This is where Turana was. We're talking about this quite a bit. And this is Eaglehawk Neck. And this is the only way you can get onto the Tasman Peninsula. So you can see why they chose this area as a penal or a prison, because it was surrounded by water, and it would be an island only for this little neck of land, which is only probably 200 metres wide. They had a team of dogs on yards, and they were chained together very close.
250.
And they used to tell the convicts that this place was infested by sharks just in here, so they wouldn't swim across. But that didn't stop the bush ranger Martin Cash. He had a go. And then we've got this this other peninsula, and this is the Forestier Peninsula. And up here we have a bridge that just, when it's open, completely shuts that off too. So you've got actually the Forestier and the Tasman Peninsula. I won't go any further with any of the others because that's Andrew's talk, but I would also like to point out the coal mines. And I would like you to see where they are in relation to Hobart. Now on Mount Wellington in Hobart, there is a tower that actually transmits all the communications, and the coal mines out here would have been the only place where the perpetrators of this massacre would have planned to leave a heroin haul, as they called it. But I'll talk more about that in a minute. So the Tasman Peninsula's southeast of Hobart. Travelling time from Hobart is 1.5 hours. That's travelling at the speed limit. The road is not very good. It's rather windy and quite narrow.
Remember last week when we spoke, when I mentioned how long it took for ambulance to arrive, and how I think it was about 1.5 hours. And I mentioned the winding roads and the proximity to the closest ambulance outpost. And then how the police, theoretically, travelling in squad cars, should have been able to get there a lot faster. While I'm paused, Hope asked whether Wendy wrote a book. I'm looking. If you type into Google, did Wendy Scurr write a book? It appears that there are quite a relatively decent amount of books written by survivors. There is one here that's called. There's one that's called Official Terror in Tasmania, Australia. 5. A compilation of findings prepared by over 20 investigator authors who researched the mass shooting. I think, though, I know you can't see this, but I'm just clicking on it to make sure. I don't think she wrote a book. Wait, I'll say this. Although, look, you can get a CD-ROM. What? I'm sure I'll do some more research and I'll find out. It's a good question. So this is basically the CD of what we're listening to now. Yeah, the Inverell Forum, 2001. So I don't think she did write a book, but I will look further into it. Good question, Hope.
My day at Port Arthur started on the 28th of April 1996. It is my own story. My life stopped that day. To best describe the feeling, it would be to say it's just like a tattoo on your brain. I feel like taking the top off my head and scrubbing until all my memory is removed. But it won't go. I only think about it every 10 minutes now. For the first 2 years, it was all the time. There would be almost 500 other stories that day. No matter where you were at the time of the shootings, there are many who would feel just the same as what I do. On that day, I was rostered on the ferry, the Bundina. I used to love the Bundina, going around the harbour and conducting tours. I'd done a harbour cruise early in the morning from between 11 and 11:30. Between 12 and 1, I took a group of people onto the Isle of the Dead, and that was the convict burial ground. A lot of those people that accompanied me on that tour, including the Mickacs, I found their bodies later in the Broad Arrow Cafe. Nanette Mickac was very well known to me. Her father lived 2 doors from me. I nursed her mother. She died 15 weeks previously. I'm glad she wasn't alive to see the death of her daughter and grandchildren. I left the ferry at about 1:10 p.m. When I reached the outside balcony of the cafe, I noticed a young man with blonde hair staring at me. He would have known I was a staff member as we always wore a navy uniform with a name tag. As I walked by, I nodded at him, he nodded back, and I went into the cafe to buy lunch. I went to where the staff could purchase their lunch without getting hurled up and walked out of the side door, and I went to the information centre. It was then about 1:20 p.m, and if Andrew could just come over and do his work, like he's supposed to, and put up an aerial photo for me, I'll be able to show you exactly where I was.
Pause. Hope asked, is Port Arthur still open for visitors? Absolutely. It's got a different vibe now. Laura, unbronzed Aussie Laura, can speak more to that because she is a Tassie local. But yes, I visited Port Arthur before this with my family, 1990, so 6 years. She was a tour guide. No, did she work for the national park or whatever the equivalent is? She worked for Port Arthur itself. She was a tour guide for that, but Wendy mentioned just a little bit before that this was a government-owned tourist site. So I guess yes, but not sort of, yes. Sort of. It has a museum memorializing the massacre. Sounds like the Holocaust museums.
Okay, this is the Broad Arrow Cafe, and there's a lot of bush up behind these cars. It's important you remember that. I'll just walk across here now. The side door of the cafe was about here. That's where I was. So that was called the Information Centre. Along here there is a little gap where some people could have got out of the building and escaped, but that's to come a little bit later. Down here, the bodies are still there. There's a couple here, another one here. That was the next day. I went to the toilet, as all good guides used to do, and returned to the information office and sat down for lunch. Often I did eat in the Broad Arrow, but that day, fortunately for me, it was busy. We had about 500 people there. And so I didn't sit down in there and have lunch. The shooting itself started at about 1:30. I say about because the 1:30 walking tour hadn't gone. If the guides didn't leave on time, they'd find they have no time to have 5-minute break when they came back before they'd have to take the next one. So the walking tours always went on time, and it hadn't gone, they hadn't even split the group up, so it was definitely before 1:30. And that is often disputed. I heard the sound of very, very loud bangs, and I never thought of a gun.
I'm just going to pause for a moment. If you recall last week, the news report, we watched a very short news clip from, I believe, 7 News Australia, and the reporter said 2:30. So one of the many hallmark features of sort of misinformation spread by the media is to cloud and blur the actual facts of these events, and push certain narratives, because if they say 2:30 p.m. that this occurred, then the police arriving, it was still 6 hours later, but it's only 5 hours later, and there's so many hallmarks in this, along with like the Dunblane massacre that I'm currently researching, which would strongly point to false flag.
Of it as possibly executed. I heard the sound of very, very loud bangs, and I never thought of a gun. I thought of it as possibly a gas explosion or anything but. I ran towards the cafe, and I was about 6 inches in from the side of this. You might be able to do that for me, where I was. Sorry, about 6 feet from the side of the cafe, and I felt something fly by my head. Had no idea it was a bullet. Still wasn't thinking, actually. I thought they was having a brawl in there. I thought, well, I'm not going in there, lucky for me. And then a person came down the steps at the front of the Broad Arrow, and he wasn't touching the steps. He was going over them. He was flying. And he was warning us to run. Well, out in front of the information centre, we had about 70 people waiting to go on this tour. There was a bus load of elderly Americans, and they sort of didn't want to leave. They thought, gee, they do it well down here, They really put on a show down here. In fact...
Remember how we spoke last week that, because some of you all in chat commented that the people also on their camcorders recording, they actually caught the shooter on camera, that they seemed to be walking to, making their way towards the sound of the shots, because it was a penal colony with tours and walking tours. Many of the tourists thought that it was a reenactment from convict days, and were walking towards the sound of the shots. Just horrific. Her mic fixes in a minute.
A little bit early in...
It rectifies.
Right. A little bit earlier in the day, one of the tours had been going up to the Commandant's cottage, and just as the shooting started, there was a girl taking a tour away from there, and that's over the bay from the Broad Arrow, right opposite. And when the shooter started to fire shots across their way, she went down on the ground, flat out on her tummy, with the Navy uniform on, and the American said, gee, they can't well. So I got the warning to run, and I just froze. And he said that the people were being shot, so I just froze to the spot, and I don't know how long I stood there actually. Might have been a minute. But I thought, well, I've got to get in there, but I can't go in there yet. So I ran away towards where they were trying to shift the elderly tourists.
So brave.
And I thought, God, if we don't let the police know, we're all going to be butchered. So I went back into the information centre, and you all can see where that is. And when I got in there, Sue Burgess and Stephen Howard were in there, and no, they weren't phoning the police, but what they were doing was very good. They were phoning around the display houses and up to the toll booth and warning them to not let any more cars in, to get the people in the area and get as many people locked up in those houses as they could. And so I ran in and I rang the police. It was 1:32 p.m. exactly, and that has been recorded. I had a little trouble convincing the police officer, naturally. He wouldn't be able to believe what I was telling him, not at Port Arthur. But in the end he said, be careful, so I knew he believed me. I'd decided where I was going, the other two hadn't. So I just said, follow me, I know where to go. And then Sue, being Sue, who was always very conscientious, she said, what about the money? Well, I used the F word, the money.
Isn't she great?
One of them had grabbed a two-way radio. I hadn't thought of that, and so we ran. And just as we came out of the cafe, he came onto the balcony of the Broad Arrow, and he started firing shots. I've been told that he actually was firing at us, but he mustn't have been trying to kill us. I think he was just going over our heads. But the man that saved us was a gentleman at the penitentiary on a cherry picker, and he had it right up in the air, working on the brickwork. Anyway, he decided he'd better get out of there, and he started the motor up. And then he started having a go at him as he lowered it down. So we got around the toilets, and up behind the Broad Arrow there's a lot of bush, and there's a bit of clear space. So we ran up the hill, and when we couldn't hear him shooting, we dived into the bush. Then we'd run again when he was shooting, because we could tell where he actually was, and when he wasn't shooting, we jumped in the bush again and laid flat. We did this 3 or 4 times, and then we heard shooting up.
Pause, Brit. We had a couple of Old Sydney Town, mate. I went to Old Sydney Town a couple of times. That was kind of cool in a convict Ned Kelly kind of way. But I was a bit younger. It was early 80s.
The road. That would have been, the first shots would have been when he killed the Mikax. Then it seemed to be getting further and further away. And then we got up behind the cafe, and we found a young lady who was working in the cafe, and she was just so traumatised and frightened. She was just standing there. As we walked down the hill to go into the cafe, we took the young girl with us, and I knew we wouldn't be able to take her in there, but we found a man that appeared to us to be shot with a shotgun. He seemed to have pellets all over him, but I've been told since it wasn't a shotgun. I don't know. Finding another man who'd been shot in the head, and he had a piece of dirty rag over it. He said, do you want to have a look at it? I said, no, leave the rag there. He said, I don't know whether the bullet's gone through my brain or whether it's just, you know, creased the skull. So that was nothing to what I was to find later. So we got these 2 men and got the young girl and got her to hide them. Now, about this time, we got a message from Ian Kingston, one of the car parkers on the day, and he said, the vehicle's abandoned, it's still here, but we don't know where he is. So I was frightened, and I think that was the stage I peed myself. I was panicking, I was so frightened. I also knew what I was going to have to face in the Broad Arrow, and having been on an ambulance for years, I've seen what gun can do. So I told the girl from the Broad Arrow to take the men and hide them. Get with them and take them further into the bush and hide them. I said, we know where you are. We'll know. Someone will come and get you. Just stay there. Sue and I climbed down the hill to the back of the cafe, and Stephen joined us. Then Sue said to me, I wonder if the girls got out. And I said, what girls? They said, Nicole and Liz. I said, oh God, no. Are they at work? And she said, yes. Now, Nicole and Liz were, well, Nicole was Stephen's wife. Nicole was Sue's daughter, sorry, and Liz was Stephen's wife. They'd been married at Port Arthur only 3 years before. Nicole was 17, Liz was 25, and she'd only worked at Port Arthur for 2 weeks. And I'm thinking to myself, how do I cope with this if there's anything wrong? So Andrew, I think's put an OHP up in the cafe. I took some very deep breaths and I entered the cafe. Had to put on a brave front. There were bodies and body parts everywhere, even on the ceiling, sliding down the walls, blood and bodies.
So this is where it gets pretty gruesome for the next little while. This is where I was just so proud of her. She really doesn't falter. She does lose her place on her notes once and gets a little overwhelmed, and she almost loses it, and then she finds her place again and carries on. What a strong woman. Salt of the earth. Disgusting that the government would put humans, their citizens, and tourists through this, knowingly.
Everywhere, the smell of warm blood. I knew I had to look for the girls. I had to go to the gift shop area, and both these girls were lying behind the counter of the gift shop, and both were dead. I thought, how am I going to cope for this? So, I knew as soon as I looked at them they were gone, because there was a huge blood loss. And so I put on an act and I got down and made out I was feeling for their pulses, because they were saying, can you do anything? And I just didn't know what to say. I knew they was dead and I just didn't know what to say. I just said, they're both dead. I'm so sorry. There was silence for a couple of minutes. I couldn't look at Sue and Stephen. I just couldn't look. I just couldn't look at their faces. They were so brave, in a terrible position. I asked them to leave and go out and help the others. They both did. Actually, Sue was in charge on the day. They put on a brave face, and nobody out there would have known what a terrible fate their girls had suffered. They continued to look after the visitors as they steadily returned to the front of the information centre. Both Sue and Stephen were highly trained in first aid because I'd trained them. This is what I had trained for myself, but never at this magnitude. When you join the emergency services, you don't expect it to be easy. I'd experienced many tragedies, but never a war zone like this. No one could be trained for this. I started to look for survivors in there, and there was only 3 left alive. The 2 men I'd found on the hill outside they'd got out. But that's actually where they were shot. I'll talk about the first person I found alive. His name was Graham Collier. He was shot in the neck. He was choking on his own blood. He was on his side. I could do nothing for him. A man's voice said, his mouth is so full of blood. I said, just put your fingers in his mouth and scoop it out. This was Dennis Gavity, a Victorian policeman. He sat with Graham while I searched for more casualties. I found out much later that Lynn, a nurse from Victoria, and you've probably read about Lynn, had gone into the cafe before me, and she'd put Graham in the side position and had actually sucked the blood from his airway with a drinking straw. Graham had his neck artery, or his carotid artery, partly clipped. He stayed conscious, and he found out that if he was able to kink his neck in a certain way, it slowed the bleeding. The bullet also grazed his cervical spine, and that's this area. The first one's down the back of your neck.
Clay, these people were her work colleagues and people she'd known in the local community, a very small, tiny little community. So her memory is amazing, but these were her friends and colleagues. Everyone okay?
And because it grazed his spine, it did something to the spinal cord, so he suffered quite a bit of paralysis even at that time. I had been trained in triage, and I knew that I had to limit the time that I could spend with Graham because I was going to lose other people. and I'd actually triaged him out of it. I'd left him to die, and I've got to live with that. But he didn't die. He lived. Graham was able to watch the gunman as he killed and wounded several people. Just before the gunman left the cafe, he was playing dead while the gunman stepped over and around him. Graham did survive that day. His life since has been similar to all of us mentally, but he suffers a lot of pain. Carolyn Lawton, she's the one that's in the New Idea this week. She was travelling with Graham and her 15-year-old daughter Sarah. She was starting to make a lot of noise. She was absolutely petrified and she would have been in agony. She was shot from the front, about here, and the bullet went straight through and put a 5 centimetre hole in the shoulder blade. It just went straight out. I asked her to be quiet because she kept screaming, and I was so frightened. I said, he's going to come back in. If he knows he left anyone alive, he's going to come back in. So I was petrified. We still didn't know if he'd be back or not. And once again, very firmly, I had to say, be very quiet. She said, have you seen Sarah? Sarah was a 15-year-old daughter. She said she's got a black hat on. And only a few feet away I had saw Sarah. She was killed instantly and with a terrible head wound. I couldn't tell Caroline the truth. Sarah was only 15 years old, and I think if I'd have told her then, Caroline wouldn't have lived. In fact, I wish now I probably had her because I don't think she wants to live. A man came with some tea towels and helped me try to stem Caroline's bleeding and to keep her calmer down. I then went to look for more alive. Rob Elliott was shot in the back of the head. His left arm was severely injured by a bullet and his wife was with him. He was in absolute agony, but she had controlled the bleeding and was trying to comfort him. Rod had tried to jump the gunman. A lot of people say, why didn't they jump him? Well, Rob did, and that's what happened to him. I then moved around the cafe looking for more alive. There were none. When I arrived at the only outside door in the gift shop, I found 5 dead.
Remember, we spoke about this last week. The back exit door was nailed shut, I believe, and afterwards, I believe the official story was that was that they had a shoplifting issue, so they blocked that exit. Really? Laura says, I was on the bus going back to Brisbane from the Gold Coast when I first heard the news about this. It was overwhelming to think it happened in Australia. I can't remember. When 96, I was at university. I actually don't have it. It's just in my memory, but not as a defining moment, which is, I guess, kind of embarrassing. That it doesn't stand out in my mind. That's heavy, Laura.
A total of 7, including my 2 workmates behind the counter of this gift shop. I'll go to the map.
So brave. What an amazing woman. And also, so she's telling us how scared she was. She's like, I was so terrified. I was terrified. And what a soldier, like what an amazing woman that she just stood on her business. She knew she had to help, and she did. She paid the ultimate price with PTSD and like I said, like public denouncing of the questions, silencing of her voice, sleepless nights forever. We
brought these little illustrations because I think it's much easier for people to understand. Thanks to Andrew. When I walked into this area here, I found all these dead. In fact, these 3 were piled up on top of one another. They were all dead, and that was the only outside exit door to that part of that building. This was glass, and that door was glass. There was no windows in here, and just up here, there was bush. These 2 girls, There's 2 staff members. This is the counter. They knew that door wouldn't open. It was broken. And they hid there. But had that door have opened, those 2 girls would have led those people to safety. We call this a Hessian screen here because 3 ladies were hiding in behind there. 2 of their husbands had pushed them in there. And and there was another lady with them as well. Now, they, I believe, was nearly last killed in that cafe. And because this was the only other exit, and that was past the gunman who was working in here and through the front door here, it's only natural they're not going to try to go through there. And this was a long table here, and several people hid under the tablecloth there. It went nearly to the floor. But I never could get that scene out of my mind because I tried to open that door and it wouldn't open. I wanted to get one of the men out from underneath to have a look at him, and I left him. I never had a look at him. I panicked. And I don't know, to this day, whether he was still alive. But I have been assured by the doctors that everybody died instantly. But I think they might just be saying that. So I feel very guilty over that. I didn't do my job properly. Because I thought, well, I was trapped, like they were.
Tough, huh?
I was trying to get some assistance. Oh, I've just told you that, sorry. It would have been at just about 2 o'clock by then. I walked quickly. I lost a page. Here we are. I walked quickly to get to the phone in the office of the cafe because in my training we'd been always told if you've got a mass casualty situation to please let the ambulance service know what you need. So I knew I had to go and do that. I couldn't believe my eyes when I saw 2 Asian people sitting on their chairs, one holding a knife and the other with her finger through the cup of a cappuccino, and they had been shot straight through here. They hadn't known what hit them. It was so sudden.
Remember I mentioned that part of it. Yes, that is survivor's guilt. Also survivor's guilt plus as a first responder, trained as a first aider, she doesn't, I think it's double, it's twofold. Her guilt is that she didn't do her job, not just that she survived, but she thinks she didn't do her job. And like Hope said, she did though. But yeah, remember. So let's take a moment from her telling of the story. I spoke about this last week. I referenced that little part of her story that for a young man, he was 28, I think, Martin Bryant at the time, with a very low IQ. Who was so inept in handling firearms that he'd not known how to. I think the story was he'd not known how to get a round out of the chamber. I don't know guns, but he wasn't good. So this she talks. Wendy mentions in at some point in her telling of this experience that. Inside the Broad Arrow Cafe, it was no more than 4 or 5 minutes. It's a little hazy. The whole thing was was much less than half an hour. So how does a young man with very low, if any, skills in terms of handling a firearm that's documented, who's also left-handed, mind you, and the shooter was right-handed by all accounts. How does he conduct such a military precise operation that he can go into a cafe, people eating their food, and shoot 2 of the tourists directly through their head with such precision and such swiftness that one was still holding his knife and the wife still had a finger in her coffee cup. Come on now. So very much like a field nurse in World War I. I've been in situations where I've had to administer first aid in the workplace. I had to take time off work as a result, it was very traumatic. Just one, and the was one of my staff member at McDonald's, and he was fine. A lot of blood. He was fine, but he traumatic as fuck. But you just go into it, right? They were absolutely professional shots, Mads. So the question becomes why. So Clay. I don't think you were here last week, but it is linked in the description box, the part 1 of this, where, but we spoke about it. But so politicians in Australia were speaking even up to almost a decade prior, late 80s, 87. This happened in 96. That to make gun law reform, there would need to be, and I quote, some sort of massacre in Tasmania for there to be enough public outcry that people would buy in to the buyback, the gun buyback. This was politically motivated. The gun law reform happened very swiftly after this, within months. The paperwork was all drawn up. Same as Dunblane. I'm doing research into the Dunblane shooting, which happened 6 weeks earlier in Scotland. Also within months, gun reform happened in Scotland. The murder rates before and after in both Scotland and Australia from firearms were relatively low and didn't change at all, didn't go up or down after these events. But also, domestic gun violence, gang on gang violence, and sort of underworld gun violence doesn't spurn public outcry such that that these laws can be implemented with sort of manufactured consent. So false flags are all about manufacturing consent from the broader population, the citizens, to affect legislative change, right? Always. 9/11. Michael is here. Michael, you get a late note. So that's good. We're already paused. So Steph asked if I could give. So Michael is here. Michael, we are going over the witness, a survivor. Yep, there it is. Mad says in X, create enough fear for the people to consent to their own civil liberties to be taken away. Yep. And J6, the Patriot Act. Like all. Hi, Mike. It's so good to see you. And Columbine. Yep, Columbine is going to be in this series as well. We'll do Dunblane next, and then Columbine. So Mike, we're currently sort of partway through. In fact, you're coming into you're coming in the deep end of Wendy Scurr's presentation. The first time she told her story of her experience on the day of, which was April 28th, 1996 in Port Arthur, Tasmania, in Australia. Let me do this. Oh no, this one. Wait, this. So that's Port Arthur, and basically, and this was only a new realization for me about a week ago, that this wasn't Martin Bryant, 28 years old, lone wolf, lone shooter, IQ of 66, mental age of 11. Lots of sus shit. He doesn't know anything. That's rude, Stephanie. How dare you? That's assault. It might be helpful for Mike to not now, but to read, to watch part 1, which is linked in the description box, because we'll be doing more on this. But basically, the travesty of a government. 35 people were slain in less than half an hour by a supposed lone gunman. The story doesn't add up. It's sus as fuck. It was the nexus for a very swift legislation change in Australia for gun law reform. The Australian government had an amnesty on returning your guns. People, they paid for the guns. It demonized legal gun holders, gun owners. Still now, farmers and criminals have guns, and you can still get licenses to carry weapons. The Bondi beach shooting recently, the father had a gun license and owned 6 weapons, and used them. So this is a bullshit reason, and like any false flag, like 9/11, like the Brown University, like Bondi Beach, also a false flag. So false flag in that, yes, it absolutely happened, but is the official narrative what happened? Well, no. Charlie Kirk, excuse me, hello Kash Patel, what are we fucking doing here? So so that's what we're doing. I don't know if that was very eloquent or concise. Steph, maybe you can fill him in, or Mike, if you have questions, ask away. Chat and I can help you. I mean, I believe you're probably beyond help because, no, I'm joking. So let's get back into this amazing woman, Wendy. I might scoot back just a little. So that. So we paused where Wendy was just talking about the two Japanese tourists who were still sitting at their table inside the Broad Arrow Cafe, each with a single bullet hole through their heads. It's very traumatic stuff, and I'm proud of you all. We're coping all right. Thank you.
Situation to please let the ambulance service know what you need. So I knew I had to go and do that. To get to the phone in the office of the cafe, because in my training we'd been always told if you've got a mass casualty situation to please let the ambulance service know what you need. So I knew I had to go and do that. I couldn't believe my eyes when I saw 2 Asian people sitting on their chairs, one holding a knife and the other with her finger through the cup of a cappuccino, and they had been shot straight through here. They hadn't known what hit them. It was so sudden. As I was moving to the office to phone the ambulance service, I trod on something. It seemed to crack under my feet. It was the skull of a young...
I didn't get there in time. Sorry. Like, I know this is a blanket trigger warning, but the next little bit is particularly heavy. So take deep breaths. Make sure you've got your water hydrated. Actually, I'm going to fill up my water. I forgot. We've got this chat. Group therapy.
Woman, she'd had the top blown off her head, and to my horror, when I looked down, her brain was lying in a bowl of chips. It had fell out of her head, and as she fell to the floor and went into the bowl. I thought to myself then, I can't take much more of this. I covered the bowl with a tea towel. I finally arrived in the office with the phone in front of me. I dialed the ambulance station in Hobart. Peter Morgan, who I know, was in the control room that day. He answered the phone. It was so good to hear from someone who I knew immediately would have the situation under control. I must have been babbling a bit because he had to calm me down. He asked me how many were dead. I didn't really know. I hadn't done a count. He said, how many can you see from where you're standing? I counted about 12. And he said, what do you need? I said, everything you've got. I need all the ambulances you can find, helicopters, and I said, I need the police. It was just about then that Paul Cooper, another guide, he'd just finished his advanced first aid training, and he came in to me and he said, I've got too much to do, I can't help you in here. He said, I've got them at the buses, because the gunman had been to the buses. But there was a nursing sister there, her name was Robin, and so she assisted Paul at the buses. The local ambulance rang shortly after I'd contacted Hobart. They were outside. They weren't allowed to come in until they got the all clear. And I felt really happy to see them, but I didn't realise when they arrived that they'd witnessed the carnage on their way in. Firstly, the toll booth area with 4 dead and the covered bodies of the Mikacs. We now had oxygen and some suction equipment and some IV fluids, thank God. Steve Ireland asked me, and he was the local doctor down there, to go and find as many wounded as possible and take a note of their names and their addresses and list their injuries. So I had to start going around again and looking for wounded, and it was all horrible. You just couldn't get away from it.
Okay, I'm just gonna give us a little something, just for a moment, because This is heavy stuff. I appreciate you all so much. You're very brave. Thank you for being here to honour Wendy and all these people, hundreds of people that day. I mean, Wendy obviously was right in the war zone. Ugh. But imagine, I can't even imagine. Let me see this one.
Never so pleased, though, to be relieved in that cafe. I went to the cottage next door and I found the man there and his wife, and they were petrified, and he'd had the side blown off his face. And he had a bit of dirty rag on it, and he wanted me to have a look at it. I said, no, I don't want to see it. It's not bleeding, leave it, leave it. They were worried he might come back. I said, well, the veranda's partly covered in, just stay there. They started to look at me a little bit strangely, and I must have looked awful because I had blood all over my legs. I put my fingers through my hair, and on the backs of my fingers, as I did this, I had body matter all over them. It just fell off the roof on top of me. My shoulders, my hair was spattered. I must say at this point, there were many visitors, bus drivers and staff who all exposed themselves to that horrific scene to help out. Without their help, I'm sure the death toll would have been much higher. There was also a man making cups of tea, believe it or not, going in and out, stepping over the bodies and distributing the cups of tea around. By this time, it was nearly 2:30, the Dunalley ambulance arrived, and that's where the bridge is. But I'll leave that for Andrew to tell you about. And on board we had a paramedic.
Thank you so much, Steph, and I love you very much. And look, Clay. YouTube might not want to admit that I'm a professional. Sorry, Stream Elements. Rude. But thank you. And Steph, you haven't picked your merch item that you won last weekend. No, when was that? Recently. Thank you, Steph. I love you. You're in the draw.
Back outside, I found more casualties. Young Bridget Cook, a staff member, had been shot in the leg, and she'd tied her apron round, and she said, don't you think I've done a good job? She said, I remembered what you taught me in first aid. And I said, yes, you have, but your leg's going a little bit blue. I think we've got to do something about it. So the doctor had a look at her, and we decided to release the tourniquet a bit and just loosened it. By this time, people began to come out of hiding. There was more ambulances arrived from Hobart. No police yet. Only the ones that came in the helicopters, because there was always a policeman in there. I can remember one of those police officers on the helicopter going to the phone, and he rang police headquarters and he said, get some effing police down here. There was nothing they could do as they were unarmed and were required to leave with the helicopter. We still didn't know where the gunman was. I was now asking myself, where were the police? It was now about 3:30 p.m, 2 hours since I'd called them, and it should have only taken 1.25 hours for a police car. I know if an ambulance can arrive from Hobart, the police should be able to do it even quicker. Visitors had evidently observed me going in and out of the cafe. They would also note that I was a staff member, once again because of my uniform and name tag. I remember a lady came to me. She was so upset. She said her husband was dead in the cafe. She had no car keys or money. It was all in his pocket of his trousers. She was so desperate. She wanted me to go and collect it from her husband's body. I explained to her that was the police's work, and I was sorry. But they hadn't arrived yet. I just started to feel embarrassed about it. I then had a request from a man, similar. He wanted his wife's handbag. She was dead in the cafe. And I thought, this is getting out of hand. Where are the bloody police? Just after 2 episodes, a lady told me she couldn't find her sister. She asked me if I'd seen a lady in there with black hair, green trousers, white trousers and a green shirt. I walked back in. She was there and she was dead. I went outside. I told the lady that I believed it was her sister in the cafe who had been shot dead. The only way she could identify her immediately would be to have a look for herself. I advised her not to. I said, the police will be here shortly. They hadn't come. And you can ask them what to do. I never did find out if that lady went in. Even those who had witnessed nothing were traumatised from the shock of the event. The policeman was, oh, he'd arrived, that's right, one got there at 4:30. Sorry, I hadn't told you that. And they dropped him in at 4:25 and they drove out at 4:30. Just dropped one off.
Wow.
And he was there, and all he was doing was able to collect names and addresses. He wasn't armed, and I really did feel sorry for him. We still had, you know, probably...
Mike, yes, the location of Port Arthur here. Oh, I got rid of the map. I'll show you. So, it does bear repeating. This. Hang on. Give me a minute. Hey, I can't remember how I did it this last time. How did I do this last time? No, here we go. Yes, like a professional. Make sure that I'm not muted because that's not very professional. So here is where Port Arthur is. My cursor there, right? That's Port Arthur. In Tasmania. This is Tasmania. My cursor is still on Port Arthur. And this is where it is in proximity to Australia. Okay. So Port Arthur, get back in there. Sorry about the Blair Witch of it all. Wait, here we go. So Port Arthur is only accessible by. Hang on, a bit more zooming. I think it's a bit. Is it a bit different now, Laura? Anyway, very, very remote, and the closest like police were 1.5 hours drive, and ambulance, like proper tactical response. The ambulances took that long to get there just because of how remote this is, right? So there you go. So to the mainland is here, and there's another access point here. So they took that long because of how far away they were. However, and so they airdropped in one unarmed police officer. He didn't even have a weapon, and he was just taking names and addresses and stuff. And it actually, exactly. They drop it in one guy. The other police officers, Shelley, I can't remember if you were here for the first one of this. The SOG, the tactical response team, were held off until 6 hours later. It's because it was a false flag thing. They didn't want people to survive, Shelley. They didn't want people in. They did nothing. The officers were there waiting. Yeah, right. The officers were there waiting for 6 hours. They gave them a barbecue while they waited, and then they finally came in at 7 p.m. 7 p.m. What the fuck?
About 400 people there. Just dropped one off. Then he'd arrived. That's right. One got there at 4:30. Sorry, I hadn't told you that. And they dropped him in at 4:25, and they drove out at 4:30. Just dropped one off. And he was there, and all he was doing was able to collect names and addresses. He wasn't armed, and I really did feel sorry for him. We still had, you know, probably about 400 people there. We had counted 32 dead bodies, and we had about 19 injured. The situation was still so hopeless, and we were helpless. Eventually, the hotel sent an invitation down for the survivors to go to warmth and have a cup of coffee and something to eat. The policeman installed himself in the hotel and went on collecting names and addresses. Then Walter Mikak came to me. I had no idea what he wanted. I felt sick to the stomach when he asked me if I had seen Nanette and his daughters. I thought they would have been home by now. He told me he'd found her car still at Port Arthur. But they weren't home. I couldn't answer that question, as I know he probably would have asked me to go and look, because I'd been told there was a woman and 2 children dead up the road, but I hadn't gone up to look because I couldn't have stood that. We were very busy, and at about 5:30, We were taking the next of kin to a cottage where the CEO lived during the week. Staff were there lighting fires to receive these people. They were all so sad, and we took 2 little van loads up. So they were looked after there by the staff. And the CEO, he'd come back from the East Coast. The staff was sent away to the East Coast, the management, at 11 o'clock that morning to stay overnight. And my supervisor, Robin Cooper, said that had never happened in the 18 years that she worked at Port Arthur, but they left at 11 o'clock and they were staying overnight. When they got word, they came back very quickly. They were back before the police came, but anyway, the CEO, he was wrapped. He said, we're going to get some SOGs in soon, and they're coming in by helicopter. I was to find out later that a helicopter held only 2 young police women off the beat from Hobart. It is now 4 hours after the shooting, and we had about 5 police that we knew of, and we're still in a hopeless situation. As the CEO approached me about 6 o'clock. I had to go to the hotel because there was a lot of people up there and they're starting to get sick. But the first thing I found was a young man up there with a bullet grazed atop the cross of his head. He was the fiancé of the girl who'd lost a skull. He was sitting in a chair swaying. I asked why he had not accompanied the walking wounded on a coach to Hobart. He said his fiancée was dead in the cafe and he still had not had the courage to ring her parents in Western Australia. He said he didn't know how he could do it. I was thinking those police should be doing this. I had to find a room for him. He was put on the bed and was accompanied by friends with whom they had seen travelling. A lady...
I'm going to this is heavy, so I think how about we have a song break just to take a moment. So give me a second. I'm picking it. Or BRB. Just it's no explanation needed. Let me think. I think this one. Grab a drink, take a walk, take a breath, have a ciggy. I don't know. We'll be right back.
Girl, are you okay? Not sure, but hey. Yeah, I'm doing my best, cause I'm never gonna rest. Gonna live to fight another day. Oh, it's a thing called the wrecking ball swing. Good, bad, up, down, turn that big frown upside down. No way, it's a brand new day. Just pick yourself back up again. Really, all you can do is sing. Girl, are you okay? Not sure, but hey, sure. Hell, I'm doing my best and I'm never gonna rest. Live to rise another day. Ain't a walk in the park or a stroll after dark. Not sitting quietly out under the stars, reflecting that women are Venus, men are Mars. Stop with this shit, take another hit. You got this, girl, you know you can. Pure sparkle, grace and wit. Girl, are you okay? Not sure, but hey, hey. Yep, I'm doing my best and I'm never gonna rest. Live to light another day. Taking my emotional regulation, program myself using weird triangulation. Cause just when you think you got it all down pat, there's a sledgehammer into your face and you're right back at the start. Baby, are you okay? Not sure, but hey, hey. Y'all, I'm doing my best and I'm never gonna rest. Gonna live to love another day. Appearances, gotta keep them up. So I smile and say, oh hey, what's up?
Shaking it off. I don't know how okay Wendy was, but I'm so proud of her. She's so brave. Wow. Okay. Let me just get everything back to where we need to be. Okay, deep breaths. It's about 20 minutes left of this, including the question time, by the way. Oh, not that one. Wait. Why? What are we doing here? I can't find the correct thing. I'll just press play and play around with it. Okay.
Come up to me and told me doing this. I had to find a room for him. He was put on the bed and was accompanied by friends with whom they had seen travelling. A lady came up to me and told me how the gunman in the cafe had shot her husband, his brother, a friend, and left her alive to watch. It was 6:30 p.m. when a warning came from the policeman in the hotel. We're still taking down names and addresses, that there was trouble outside. I later found that the staff at a house called Cloffer, just in front of the hotel, it's used as an administration building. 5 of the staff was out on the veranda having a cigarette when 3 shots were fired right in front of them. We don't know who fired these shots. We don't know why.
So that's kind of weird too, if you recall. So she just mentioned that there was 3 shots fired in the dark, where 5 staff were in a cottage, not the Seascape cottage, a different one. Because at this point, Martin Bryant was holed up in the Seascape cottage under siege by the police, I think. That's supposedly the narrative, right? That after executing 35 people in less than half an hour, he made his way to the Seascape cottage, apparently then killed the 2 occupants there. Questionable. I think they're already dead first. Hard to tell when the whole thing went up in flames. And that's how they got him out of the cottage. But so who fired these 3 shots? Random? RDK.
But they were taken back into that house. They had the lights turned out. Walter was screaming because he just found his wife and children. We had people that were traumatised the first time being traumatised the second time. We had staff that had come in to help being traumatised totally. We saw a news broadcast on television at the hotel. They said the gunman was surrounded at Seascape. So who was it? Had he escaped, or was it someone else? These shots were also heard by the CEO, and he had instructed many staff and visitors in there to stay lying on the floor and keep the lights turned off. Up in the hotel, we couldn't turn the lights off. There's 200 people up there. We had a couple having chest pains. We were just getting into the hotel rooms, and it was just, I just couldn't turn the lights off. I just couldn't tell them, because they would have been again traumatised. The matron of the nursing home at Newbeen, Sandra Carmichael, arrived at the hotel to help me. We were continually finding all these people unwell, and we was filling up one bed after another, and I just said, where are these ambulance people? But they were down at the Broad Arrow and everywhere trying to look after the crime scene. Just after 7:30, in they come. Police from everywhere. They were heavily armed. They escorted the group from Cloffer to the backpackers hostel next to the hotel. Police also came in and was assisting our lonely policeman, who did a wonderful job. Several traumatised.
One other suspicious thing, right? So I can't remember where it was. I believe in Hobart, there was an international conference for journalists, like the day before. So they had journalists from around the world ready to report on this live. That's also fucking suspicious, isn't it? And Simi says, no way all of this was done so effectively by a mentally disabled dude, right? Also, if you recall, the two on-duty armed officers were nowhere near Port Arthur historical site at the time because somebody called in a fake call. I think it was reporting something to do with drugs, a drug deal or something suspicious that was an hour the opposite direction. So you're telling me that someone with a 66 IQ, mental age of an 11-year-old, had the wherewithal and the ability to plan to throw in a diversion call to the only two local police who would have been able to attend with weapons? Yeah. Absolutely. Another false flag, right? So all those journalists from around the world, I think it was something like 700 journalists attending this conference or this. I can't remember. I think I watched a second interview with Paul Moder. I believe it was in that interview. It's a little bit duplicative of the one we already watched. That's just a snippet that's in my brain. There's so many sus things. And like I said, I've said a couple of times, thanks to Vixie for making a connection, just an idea. She had a light bulb moment that perhaps Dunblane was the same kind of thing. The Dunblane massacre, 15 children and a teacher killed, 16 people in so many similar things, with the same gun law reforms implemented swiftly that happened 6 weeks before this event. Like, fuck. So when you think to yourself, the government wouldn't dare. They wouldn't dare be so evil. There's no way. Well, yes, there is a way.
Trauma counsellors walked in from Hobart. They were treating us like children. I'll never forget these people. They had no compassion. I know a lot of the visitors obeyed. Some had no option. I have no idea what happened to these people. We sat down for a while, totally dazed and traumatised, and all of a sudden we had more to do, but this wasn't to last long. Some men who had arrived with the coroner weren't very well, and they was up at in the bar, and they were crying. They couldn't stand what they'd seen. My day finished at 1 a.m. on Sunday the 29th of April. I went home to my husband, and I fell into his arms, and I cried and I cried. I quietened down and I decided to wash myself. I showered and showered. When I started to dry my feet, there was deep cuts in it, in the top of my right foot. I didn't think at the time, but a few days later it dawned on me that I should have tests for Hep A, Hep B and HIV. Normally this would have worried me, as I had a lot of other people's blood on my feet, but it didn't seem to bother me. It didn't seem to worry me at all. A few weeks later the results came back negative anyway. Over the next 2 weeks we buried our workmates, acquaintances. There was 9 in total for us. The Micac's in Heidelberg in Victoria, after a service at the hospital where Nanette and Walter met, and started to do.
Heidelberg's just near me. Oh, it's about 20 minutes, half an hour away from where I live, that she just referenced. Beautiful suburb.
Dawned on us that we weren't fitting in down at Port Arthur. We were all unwell. We seemed to be kept apart. We were being separated. A Salvation Army team of counsellors from Sydney and Hobart were so helpful. Major Don Woodlands was to become a special friend to us all. I don't know whether any of you have had any contact with him, but he's a marvellous man. And I was very go. I read a statement. We've been given a lot of witness statements, and that was one of Mr. Jim Laycott. And evidently a police officer arrived on the scene outside of the site, but he was talking to this man, and he'd witnessed, or he'd been to see the girl that was shot in the BMW. He'd seen the people shot at the toll booth, and he was there 3 minutes after. And he'd been our local cop down there for 12 years. He knew most of the guides, and he drove away. And we've never heard anything about him as far as the Port Arthur incident goes. So I found that very hard to handle, as I had him in my first aid classes. I've taught him 2 or 3 courses. I don't know where we go from here, but we need help. We need, as Australian citizens, we need to know the truth. I don't know whether we ever will, but we must have that coronial inquiry, not a royal commission. And because of the display of courage and bravery at Port Arthur on that terrible day, the injured victims who were alive when they were found survived, and they're still alive as far as I know. The last thing that I'd like to say is that it has been reported that a lot of us have psychiatric conditions. We have indeed. I still see a psychiatrist. I've been in hospital many times in an effort to beat my depression. I've also had shock treatment. I even tried to commit suicide to find peace. This was about 14 months ago. In this, I'm not alone. We are not paranoid, and I've told you this because I think the powers that be will attack my mental state.
Which is another hallmark, right, of false flag truth tellers. People who are asking questions and tell the truth are smeared and called crazy. It's a smear campaign, diminishing their credibility, so that the general public disregards their truth. It's not just in these things. It's like that's a smear campaign in general, right? Same with like the satanic panic. Spoiler alert, actually was happening, not crazy people going crazy and getting obsessed with Satanism. Actually happened. Same. So question everything, right? As soon as you hear like, hello, Candace Owens. I mean, she's controlled op, but the shit they're saying about Candace Owens is pure smear because she is speaking truths. The more hard in influencers and the media and politicians go to attributing psychiatric issues with truth tellers called conspiracy theorists, which is a term created by the CIA to stop people asking questions. Because as soon as you're labeled a conspiracy theorist, you're a fucking nut job, right? So for poor Wendy, she's being very honest and open. Understandable psychological issues after this despicable experience, this poor woman. But they can say, nah, she's just crazy. And this, particularly this is 30 years ago, right? The stigma of mental health was far greater then than it is now. It's much more understood. Like post-traumatic stress disorder is much better understood these days. People having mental health issues and CPTSD is far more mainstream. But 30 years ago, but still, they'll call you crazy. You're fucking crazy. I get called crazy many times a day on social media. And Adolf.
I'm not mad, I'm just sad.
Okay.
Not alone. Effort to beat my depression. I've also had shock treatment. I even tried to commit suicide to find peace. This was about 14 months ago. In this, I'm not alone. We are not paranoid, and I've told you this because I think the powers that be will attack my mental state. I'm not mad, I'm just sad. I have no affiliations with any political parties, or I don't belong to any shooters.
It takes a great deal of courage for many people to simply speak publicly. To speak on such an issue and to relive those experiences indeed shows us that Wendy has the courage to speak out. Yes?
If I'm correct, can you hear me? How's that?
Okay.
Got it.
So here we go with the Aussie men at the RSL club or wherever this was. It was, like at the local club, asking their questions. I don't think one single woman stands up and asks. There's some fair bit of incredulity here, but this is interesting. She does really well fielding the questions.
If I'm correct, you said not a royal commission?
No.
Yes. No royal commission.
No royal commission, we need a coronial inquiry.
Why? Could you say why?
Yes, quite simply.
Pause. Interestingly, another false flag, the Bondi Beach Massacre. It happened, but not the way they say it, as in not for the reasons the narrative is. Anthony Albanese is not conducting a royal commission or a coronial inquiry into the Bondi Beach massacre. Why would we need to have any questions answered? No, he's just announced a royal commission into anti-Semitism and online hate speech. I think they're the two things, but that's not what the public wants. So either there'll be a show inquiry, or there'll be no inquiry in these events, same as Dunblane. So the question's answered. I think it's the attorney who answers, and it's a little hard to hear, but we'll see.
I wonder if we could leave that to Andrew a little later. Thank you, sir. Yes, next question, Chris.
I haven't been able to find this. So this video is almost over. I haven't been able to. I haven't looked, to be honest. The second part to this, but after we finish the live stream, I'll see if I can find it, because obviously there's a second part to this event, this Inverell Forum 2001. So stick a pin in that one.
Chris.
Yes, forgive me, I did get here late. I've travelled a long distance, and my question relates to a report that I'd heard that there had been a rifle stuck underneath the table, and that the person, presumably not Martin Bryant, had arrived there, grabbed the gun, and shot everyone from there. Did you give any report of during the shooting? Did you see the person shooting?
I didn't see the person shooting at all. I'm sorry, I can't answer that. Andrew might be able to later.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next question, please.
I was told there was a media blackout in Tasmania.
Pierre asked, how can there be legally no inquiry? Well, the government does whatever the government wants, right? Like there's outcry in Australia at the moment because the reason there's no inquiry to Bondi is because it was ISIS funded. ISIS stands for Israeli Secret Intelligence Service. Australia is owned by Israel, like America, same. So puppets like Trump and Albanese, our Prime Minister, and Keir Starmer, they are just dancing puppets. Dance, bitch. Like, dance for us. You want our money? You do. It's a cover-up. It's a cover-up. Same. There was a royal commission or an inquiry into Dunblane. It happened very soon after the event, less than 3 months. Almost none of the victims, the child victims, 5 years old, families were there. It was far too soon after the event for them to be able to cope. They were still so deep in their grief. A lot of the evidence presented was inaccurate, but from my research so far, excuse me, and all the evidence in Dunblane was locked up for 100 years, same as the evidence for Port Arthur. Nobody, I think it's 2072. No, it must be later than that. There's a few different dates. I'll have to look into that properly. But so cover-ups, false flags, cover-ups. Transparency is when there's nothing to hide. Why do you lock away all the evidence? Because you've got something to hide. Why do you not present the evidence, even if it's kind of bastardized and falsified? If you're not even going to hold an inquiry, a commission into things like this, things that shape a nation's history, as Port Arthur did, you have to ask big questions. And there are a lot of big questions being asked. I wasn't aware of them in my little bubble. I am now. Holy shit. So.
Immediately following the shoot.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next question, please.
I was told there was a media blackout in Tasmania immediately following the shooting, and down there people just didn't know what was going on. I spoke to someone in my immediate area, and he confirms that his parents used to ring every night after the news to find out what the latest was. Could you confirm that?
I can confirm that. There wasn't an actual media blackout, but it was what the media said was very, very controlled. And I have heard that the people on the mainland had a lot more information given than what we did.
Thank you. Yes, next question, please.
Yeah, thanks for your talk, Wendy. That was very good. The question I've got to ask is, do you...
I mean, Vixie, Keir Starmer's a Jew. He's Jewish. So is the newly installed Claudia Sheinbaum, president of Mexico. We spoke about this last time, or recently, who in her quest for who's Jewish in a nation where there are only 60,000 Jews. How does the first female president of Mexico also be Jewish? And 37 of her competitors in the race were assassinated. Like, come on now. This is all part of 2030. So is the whole Greenland thing. It's all connected. It's all connected. We're fine. Everything's fine. We're going to save humanity. We've got this, shorties.
Do you have any idea at all how long the shooting went on for in minutes? Because there's a lot of controversy about that, you see.
Thank you.
I can tell you now for sure it was 4 to 5 minutes.
Right, thank you.
Next question.
Yeah, Wendy, thanks for your presentation. Could you tell me what politicians you wrote to and what questions you asked and what answers you received, please?
Wendy.
Well, we've contacted every politician in Australia. A lot didn't answer, but some of the ones that did promised to do something. And then when we sort of wrote the next letter and finally put some more hard words on them and get some answers, we didn't get a reply.
Thanks, Wendy.
Thank you. Next question, please.
Wendy.
Pause. Sorry, how Aussie are these guys? This is just a time capsule. I love it so much. I mean, it's been very heavy, and I appreciate you all very much. Pikachu says, Miss Shorty, be careful. You know what? I spent quite some time. I took 5 weeks off from streaming to contemplate a lot of navel gazing. I go into everything I say with a full understanding that not only could I lose my entire YouTube channel in a heartbeat, and I've released all pride and emotional attachment to that reality, despite it being my 2-year plus long passion project. I'm also fully aware that I might easily at any point have a knock on my door from law enforcement to have a little chat with me about my conversations that I have here and or on Twitter. I'm never ever hateful. I'm only ever speaking the truth. But as we know, that's a dangerous task. It's a dangerous mission. We've got this. I've got this. Like, let's fucking go. History. What do they say? History was never. History was, strong women make history. Quiet women don't. It's a scary time. It is. I'm not scared. There are times I'm like, you know what? I'm always making sure that I'm wearing underwear at the moment at home, just in case. Hey. And if I disappear, if I go radio silent, call the local, call the federal jails. This is a federal crime. It's fine. Australia is very dangerous for a lot of things. There's a guy in jail at the moment. Wow, I'll pull it. I bookmarked it. I'll pull it up when we finish this. It's a couple more minutes. We'll have a look at a few other things. There's a guy in jail at the moment. It's wild, like wild. It's got tones of Richard Allen in terms of the despicable treatment for. Well, this guy did nothing, so did Richard Allen. So anyway, let's go.
And to get some answers, we didn't get a reply.
Thanks, Wendy.
Thank you. Next question, please.
Thanks, Jenny.
Wendy, I take it that you were not interviewed by the police about this massacre. Have you got any idea why?
I was interviewed by the police, but as soon as I got to the Broad Arrow part of it. They didn't want to know any more. And I also wasn't going to be going to court if there had been a trial.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next question.
Yes, you earlier said that there were 500 people in the cafe at the time of the shooting.
No, I didn't say that. There were 500 people at Port Arthur.
Oh, at Port Arthur. Were all the people in the cafe killed?
No. There were supposedly, according to the court, there were 20 killed, 12 injured with 29 bullets.
Yep. Do you agree with the book, in principle, the book Deadly Deception at Port Arthur? Have you read the book?
I have got an article in it, but it's there's a lot I don't agree with.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Sir.
In your experience as a nurse, have you ever had any dealings with impaired mental abilities of patients? And do you think that an impaired person could have shot people like that?
Martin Bryant had an IQ of 66 and a mental age of 11. And I don't think he possibly could have carried it out in the 90 seconds to 2 minutes that the court says.
Thank you, Wendy. Next question, please.
Firstly, congratulations.
Pause. I was going to say, Hope, I don't know if it's that bad. And then the guy says, firstly, congratulations, sir. Got to remember, this was 30 years ago. And these are like Inverell is a very small coastal country town in New South Wales 30 years ago. Considering, a bygone era, like not a single woman asks a question. You can hear children. There are children, if you were listening, you can hear children sort of fussing throughout this. Yikes. But I think all those things considered, the questions are okay. Yikes. I think women would have asked much more empathetic questions, but it wasn't the culture of Australia at the time, 30 years ago,
You mentioned three shots very late in the day at an establishment opposite to where you were working, and it sounds like it was dark because you said you didn't want to put the lights out. And then you mentioned that the police turned up. I think you said it was later than the 3 shots, and I wonder if you'd be kind enough to relate the timing of those shots as to when you received the information that the suspect was being holed up in the other place that I'm not sure of the name of.
Seascape. The police shots went off at about 6:30. 3.
Was that police shots or 3 shots?
3 shots.
3 shots, thank you.
Sorry, I might have said police. And at 7:30, the police left Turana to come in. I've got a document saying that even the coroner wasn't allowed into Port Arthur. It wasn't to leave there until 7:30.
Actually, Mike, I misspoke. This is 2001, so 25 years ago, but same. It was after Y2K. Thank God we all survived. You know what? It would have probably been a much better turn of events if Y2K had actually become a thing and there were no computers. I'll go back on.
3.
Was that police shots or 3 shots?
3 shots.
3 shots, thank you.
Sorry, I might have said police. And at 7:30, the police left Turana to come in. I've got a document saying that even the coroner wasn't allowed into Port Arthur. It wasn't to leave there until 7:30 because the situation wasn't safe. But they didn't care about all those people that we had there. And I might add, there were plenty of police, only about half an hour away. They kept them there. They didn't let them in. And I've also got some handouts here that are in the room, and they relate to some of the staff, the treatment of the staff. They're fairly self-explanatory. There is a little story there about a mortuary truck, but I'm not going to take that off Andrew, and I think I've had enough at the moment. Thank you.
Yes, Wendy. Pause. Okay, pause. Okay, I'm going to mute that. So here we have, so there's some amazing graphics. I actually screenshotted all of these because love 1010. Wanted, murder, treason for the conspiracy to commit terrorism. Let me make sure I'm not muted. Amazing. Terrorism at Port Arthur to impose United Nations gun control laws in Australia. Same as in Dunblane 6 weeks prior. Not even 6 weeks. Top 10 most wanted. So John Howard, ex-Prime Minister, Member of Parliament. He had only been the Prime Minister for a matter of months. I believe probably about less than 6 months. Tim Fischer, ex-Deputy Prime Minister, Federal MP, ex-Justice Department for the Australian Federal Government, D. Smeaton, Director of ASIO, so that's our CIA, ASIO, D. Sadler, H. Overbeek, operative at Broad Arrow Cafe. So they're implicating a guy at the cafe, right? Then also our groom, the ex-premier of Tasmania. So I think that's like your governor. I don't know. Anyway, the head of the state versus the head of the country. D. Bug, ex-Department of Public Prosecutions, Tasmania. W. Cox, ex-Judge, Tasmania. L. Prinz, ex-Police, Tasmania. R. Fielding, ex-Police, Tasmania. 22 body hearse. Okay, so we spoke about this later. It's the graphic right down the bottom. Maybe it scrolls. Hang on, let me just see. I muted it so because it's got music. No, it doesn't. So remember the Tasmanian government in less than months prior to this event purchased with taxpayers' money a 22 body hearse before Port Arthur and then sold it not long after. Oh my goodness, my Alexa just switched on. Yikes. It's okay, Alexa. I don't even have Wi-Fi. What are we doing? And the citizens of Tasmania were like, why the fuck do we need to spend taxpayer money on it? What do we need a 22 body hearse for? Well, I'm glad you asked. Hold my beer, said all of the above. And Martin Bryant, innocent Patsy. So there's a few more graphics. I'll leave it quiet because music. So Jim Laycock, the previous owner of the Broad Arrow Cafe, knew Martin Bryant since he was a child. His statement read, "I do not recognize the male as Martin Bryant." Okay. And then the next graphic is coming. Pause for dramatic effect. Here's the hearse. So the morgue truck was advertised for sale afterwards. This is the actual advertisement. Vehicle for sale. Genuine inquiries only. The yellow Chevrolet 350 VB. Ooh, Steph, Victoria Bitter. Truck with refrigerated body. Gross. Holds 22. This vehicle was primarily used as the disaster vehicle in the Port Arthur massacre. Remember, recently purchased prior. Entire words, please, Lisa. This vehicle is currently for sale and all reasonable offers will be considered. What, so they didn't need it anymore? They knew that? Okay. The vehicle has value as not only a refrigerated unit for body removal, it is the only one of its kind in the entire country. So it was commissioned. They had it built. The memorabilia value of it for anyone making a movie, series, or writing a book on Port Arthur is limitless. Ugh, that's ick. That's gross. Ghouls. Not only would the purchaser be getting the disaster vehicle, but the whole Port Arthur story would be given as well. Which story? This vehicle is currently for sale and all reasonable offers will be considered. The fuck? They think we're stupid, right? Well, I was stupid. I believed the narrative. I'd never heard any of this. I didn't ever pay attention. I took it as an event in Australia's history that happened the way they told us, blindly. Important Port Arthur facts. Calls to police reporting an active shooter started at 1:32 p.m, yet police did not arrive until 4:30 p.m. And remember, that was the unarmed guys. The Colt AR-15 rifle used in the massacre, SP 128807, was registered as a Victorian police rifle. And it's not on this slide, but Martin Bryant didn't have a license or a car. He did have a gun license, supposedly, but the name on the license wasn't identical. I think it was Martin Bryant. And so how did this Victorian police rifle get from the mainland? If you remember, Melbourne's on the mainland, Tasmania is the little island down the bottom. With having no car, so you can catch a ferry or fly from Australia, the mainland, to Tasmania, but not if you don't have a car. And remember, Port Arthur is right down the very, very, very bottom of the island that is Tasmania. The ferry obviously goes from the very top, the shortest, route across the Bass. Is it the Bass Strait? I never remember that. Anyway, the water. Martin Bryant was 1 hour away in Fawcett having a coffee when the first shots were fired at the Seascape Cottage at 10:40 a.m. So that's before the massacre. The massacre happened at 1:30, just before 1:30, before the walking tours commenced, the next round of tours. Yet I still went against our constitution and did everything in my power to stop a coronial inquest. Southeast corner, yes. Pikachu says, I think they want people to know it's sadistic. Yeah. Excuse me, the throat clearing resumes. And not even any cheese. I've been snacking on cherry tomatoes. I've been sticking to my fasting for 16, 18, 20 hours a day. I feel amazing. One more. I think there's one more slide. No, it could be the end. Yeah, it's over. Is it over? Nope. Okay. With all this, so this is a sign at a protest. With all this gun control talk, I haven't heard one politician say how they plan to take guns from criminals, just law-abiding citizens. And it's the same now, the same rhetoric in the media with after Bondi, another amnesty, another buyback. All right, sure. So the same as in Dunblane. In Dunblane, afterwards, handguns were called back. But it basically just demonized the handgun owners. The crimes with murders with firearms remain constant statistically before and after. This is just bullshit. This is about control of the people and manufactured consent. Let me see. I don't know. Oh, here we go. When all the guns have been banned, when all the words have been censored, when all the history has been erased, when all the freedoms have been taken, only then will you discover that you should have spoken up and done something, which is what we're doing, right? This is what I'm doing. This is why, be careful, Miss Shorty. I'm not a pussy. I'm not scared. I'm doing something. I think that's it. Walk and talk chat. We're just waiting and seeing. Boom. That's 60 minutes. We won't be doing that because I will get a full copyright strike. So now I'll go back through here and see what I missed while I was reading. Sitting ducks. Yeah, I've got I saved. I'm starting a research. I'll save it. I'm starting a research thread for Dunblane. It is proving a little trickier. I'm almost all the way through a 2-part podcast called Dunblane. Dunblane Unburied by with William Ramsey investigates. And a woman who was not a first responder at Dunblane, but took over the shift after. And the parallels are astounding. But in doing my research, there's not much around. There's less talk. Less people are less vocal about Dunblane being same. But it's there. I'll find it. But I found a graphic of police officers in the UK before the Dunblane were, the what are they called? The bobbies with the hat, the cute little hat, and no weapons. They used to have a truncheon. That's it, like a baton. And afterwards, they are armed to the hilt. So once the population, the civilians, are disarmed theoretically, the police in the UK went from being like old school bobbies to carrying all these firearms, automatic, the whole thing, full blown vests. It's all performative bullshit. It's all about compliance and control. And I don't even know whether it's a sitting duck thing. I think it's about control. Clay's going to bed. No, Clay. Thank you so much for being here. Pikachu says, you know what's interesting? Open carry is legal and normalized in Israel for Israelis. How about that? Now, I said I'd find a thing that I thought I had bookmarked. I hadn't bookmarked it. However, but about the guy in Australia is in federal jail at the moment. I'll just tell you about it. I'll try and recall. Federal jail at the moment. He missed the birth of his child. He missed Christmas. It wasn't even. He didn't even tweet anything hateful, although that could be being minimized. Could be. They're calling him a Nazi. But he basically called for, he retweeted something and called for his people, his followers, to ratio the OP, which means basically the original poster gets a certain number of likes. And then if you can ratio them, it means that your reply or your retweet, your quote tweet, gets more likes than the original post, right? So that's apparently all this was. I could be wrong. That could be just minimizing. But he's missed all these things. He's been in solitary confinement. He's got no access even to his attorney because they say he's been deemed a national security threat. Many things. All as censorship. All as changing the narrative. Thanks, Laura. It is part of MK Ultra. I listened to a very good interview or a space earlier today. I listened to it twice already, actually, about MK Ultra with David Icke and some people in the Netherlands who have made a documentary about MK Ultra and all of that. And it's being released tomorrow. So I'll see whether I can get my hands on it. We'll probably have to watch that in Kick, but it's going to be good. Now, one more thing, and then we'll go for the day. But thank you all for being here. I said that we would have a look at the Port Arthur site. So shall we? Wait. Okay. So here are, excuse me, some tours that you can book. There's another site. Oh, this is Escape from Port Arthur. Wow. Made it pretty tricky on the 28th of April, didn't they? 1996. There's a ghost tour. I want to say I did the ghost tour. Let me see. Hang on. There was a better site. Buster's snoring. He's relaxed. Let me see. No, I don't. I can't find it. I'm terrible on the spot like this. Port Arthur Massacre Museum. Full stop. We'll have a look at this. Images. Okay. Make sure you can see what I'm looking at. You can. So what's this? I'm so bad at this. Miss What the Fuck could do this better than I can do it. Let's try this. Okay. So, excuse me. Tribute to Port Arthur victims. Motherfuckers. Not the victims. Government. Irish President Mary McAleese yesterday paid an emotional tribute to the Port Arthur massacre victims. Oh no, that's paywall. Anyway, so you can do some do some research of your own if you like. Let me know what you find. We'll definitely cover more on Port Arthur. Somebody asked me before, and I was all up in my TED talk. And let me see if I can find it. Something about Martin Bryant. Was it Mads on Twitter? Anyway, if you ask me a question about if I was planning to cover something about this, shoot me an email because my brain didn't register it. Not unusual. I'll pop my email down the bottom there. If I can ever actually, it's like it's my brand. It's my first day. Sorry, friends. There it is. So we're definitely going to do, excuse me, another stream on this. We'll be back next weekend with something. I've got the Pizzagate for part 1 of Pizzagate scheduled, I think, for this time next week. That's kind of fluid to just make it, not because it's just I'm still compiling stuff for that, and I have to get it in my head straight how I'm going to present that one, because it's going to be a little more it's not just a share a screen and play. So make sure your notifications are on, and keep an eye out on the socials where I'll tell you what we've got happening. Thank you all for being here so much. It was a heavy one, but like we were talking together, Arca. Yeah, David. There's some problematic stuff with David Icke, but not really. That's he's an example of smear campaigns to discredit, because he tells some pretty hard truths. Maybe not about lizards. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised, but learn so much, says Hope. Yes, thank you so much. Thank you, my beautiful mods. Thank you, friends, shorties. Also, if you watched whether or not you watched the gratitude stream last night, or have watched it since, definitely do watch it. Shoot me an email. Hope I'll get in, and also Christy, I'll get in and read my emails now from you guys. Thank you. Let's practice being consciously grateful for things every day. Being grateful for the good and the bad, because that's life, right? And it will help give us more resilience, emotional resilience, and sort of temerity to get through what's inevitable over the coming months and years. We're going to be brave. We're going to be kind. We're going to be objective. We're going to leave our emotions at the door wherever we can. We're not going to take the bait from the psyops that are all of what we're watching with this shit. That's what they're doing. They're trying to manipulate us to because trauma, shared traumas, like watching Charlie Kirk have his neck shot open on live on your phone, or Bondi Massacre. The trauma creates a herding effect of citizens into the cattle run, right? And makes us far more compliant. We look to our people in authority to save us from the shit. But they're the ones that are inflicting the shit on us, right? Renee Nicole Good in Minnesota was actually shot in a street with so much 33 symbolism. Like, they're so blatant, it's in our faces. This is all manufactured. Everything that's happening at the moment is a psyops. Everything. Nothing's organic. Like, nothing's organic. So if we can be grateful for the things we know are real and true, like Mother Nature, our loved ones, our skills and talents, books, music, each other, our friendships, those things are true. And then we can navigate through the bullshit, the lies, right? Vixie says, once you see it, you can't unsee it. Correct. Once you're red-pilled, J-pilled, Satanist-pilled, New World Order pilled, you can't go back. And it's a terrifying realization, but together we're strong, right? We have gratitude for our community, gratitude for our intellectual curiosity and honesty. We are not sheeple. We are able to sit in the uncomfortable truths about the world together. Okay, so be kind to each other. Be kind to yourselves. Leave your emotions at the door when you're talking with people in social media. Take a step back and say, why are they trying to get us to fight with each other? You know why? Because division is where people then are preoccupied in fighting each other rather than going, what the fuck are you guys doing up there? We see you. We know what you're doing up there, and we're not going to stand for it, okay? So I love you all very much. Have an amazing rest of your weekend or an amazing week, and I will see you all either around the traps in the socials or next week at Camp Shorty. Mwah. I love you all so much, so much, so much.
I love you all so very much. We had a blast just chatting and stuff. Things may have gone a bit off the rails. Professional when all else fails. 'Cause chat is great, so much to say. Emotes and all the caps out. May have been cheese, bit faster please. The time has come, Camp Shorty out. We're skating through all the tough things, learning about this and that, defense motions, prosecution, and narcissistic twats. 'Cause chat is babe, so much to say. Emotes and all the all caps out. May have been cheese, bit faster please. The time has come, Camp Shorty out. Community, just you and me. Occasionally, Buster and Poppy. It's the whole thing, Miss Shorty swing. Together we make each other happy. 'Cause chat is babe.